so that whoever is speaking can be heard. If you have any questions, and I would like to take questions at the end, I've got a bit of an overview to provide, but if you do have questions, can you either pop them in the chat function, and people from my team will be able to manage the Q&A session, or you can also raise your hand using the hand icon in Teams. And if I could just ask that everyone is respectful to everybody else in terms of the questions that you raise. I'm not really going to give a presentation today because what I do want to do is give everybody the opportunity to ask your questions. And so I wanted to give this session as much time as possible for Q&A. And I do recognise that a number of you may have come along to some of the consultation sessions that we've already given. We did hold a webinar at the beginning of the exhibition period, and we've also held a number of in-person consultation sessions in Jindabyne over the last 2 to 4 weeks. So I acknowledge that some of you have been to those sessions and you've spoken to the team. And so this is, I guess, an opportunity for you to ask any questions that you didn't get to ask previously, or have a chat to us about some new things that may have popped up as you've worked through the documents. The exhibition of the draft master plan is an opportunity for us to hear from our stakeholders and the community. It's an opportunity for you to tell us what you like and also to tell us what you don't like, and to give us your ideas as to what you'd like to see changed. And I am pleasantly surprised that we've had some really good, robust conversations with the community about what some of your ideas are. And I really want to encourage you to continue doing that because we have heard some really good feedback, and we are taking all that feedback on board. And we will be making changes to the master plan as a result of the feedback that we've received. So I really do want to encourage you to write a submission and talk to us about what your concerns are. There are also going to be other opportunities for you to provide feedback to us. So the slide that I actually have up on the screen is just an overview of the planning framework. So at the moment, we've got the draft master plan on exhibition with all of the technical reports that support that master plan. And we also have a number of technical studies. There's about 21 technical studies in total that supports the master plan. Then we have a discussion paper that's also on exhibition at the moment. The discussion paper talks about what planning controls are going to be changing as a result of the master plan. However, and it's important to note this, there is still some further detailed work that needs to be undertaken, and that work will be also publicly exhibited in the future. So there will be more opportunity for the community to get involved in this project and have a say as we move into the delivery phase. And we've got some more detailed information around some of those detailed planning controls that will need to be amended to support the planning instruments that exist. So I don't want people to think that this is the end and this is the only time we're going to be talking to the community. Community engagement is important to us, and it's something that we want to continue as the project moves from the draft master planning phase that we're in now through to finalisation and then into the delivery phase. Just really briefly, we've got 3 different components that the master plan applies to. We've got what we're calling Jindabyne Catalyst precincts. So these are the precincts that government will be investing in infrastructure in. Those precincts will be covered by a new activation precinct SEP. And will be facilitated through a delivery plan, and that's what New South Wales Government, through the Regional Growth Development Corporation, will be responsible for delivering. We then also have what we're calling Jindabyne Growth Precincts. This is predominantly where the new residential developments will go. The planning instrument that's going to be amended is the Snowy River Local Environment Plan, and there will also be an update of the Snowy River Development Control Plan. That work still needs to occur and will be publicly exhibited down the track. The third precinct that the master plan covers off on is the Alpine precincts. That's going to be facilitated through an amendment to the Alpine SEP. And the National Park Plan of Management, a draft of that is also on exhibition at the moment. But then we're also planning to prepare an Alpine DCP, Development Control Plan, for the Alpine region. And national parks will continue to be involved with all of that development work into the delivery phase. So as I said, there's still a lot of opportunity for you to get involved. And we still have some more work to share with you as we move into delivery. Now, I just wanted to give you a bit of an overview of some of the feedback that we've heard so far, because I think we've received over 300 submissions to date. And we've also met with lots of people through the face-to-face community sessions that we've been doing over the last couple of weeks. We've heard that there is some concern in the community about building height, lot sizes and density in and around Jindabyne. Also, housing diversity and housing affordability are issues that have been raised with us, and we understand that there's a need to have good housing diversity and good housing affordability within Jindabyne. And particularly when it comes to building height, lot sizes and density, those controls are going to be further developed through the development control plan. So that next stage of detail that we'll be exhibiting and seeking comment on in the future. So we haven't gone into that level of detail yet, but we intend to. And so that work will be shared with you as we do it. We've also heard a lot of feedback around car parking and the proposed changes to Kosciuszko Road, and how we can provide more flexible traffic solutions in the peak season, in the peak winter season. So we're taking all of this into consideration as well. We've also heard about how important summer activities are to the community, and that you'd like the special activation precinct to support activities such as hiking, fishing and mountain biking. And they're all things that we are addressing and will continue to do so as we finalise the master plan. We're also hearing that the community wants more sporting and recreational facilities. There are ongoing discussions about how this will be delivered through the Sports and Education Precinct, which is one of the precincts identified in the Catalyst Precinct in the master plan. And I'd just like to say that if you are part of a local sporting club, we'd recommend that you do make a submission on behalf of your organisation. So while we are receiving individual submissions, we are also receiving business submissions. We'd also like to hear from sporting clubs and groups as well as to what some of the issues that are important to you are. In terms of health services, and we've had a lot of feedback on health services, our planners have been meeting with New South Wales Health, emergency service personnel, regional and primary health networks, and local health practitioners. We do acknowledge that the work that we did for the draft master plan in relation to the future provision of health services was probably a little bit light on, and we acknowledge that. And in order for us to provide a little bit more detail around that, we've had to do a lot more engagement with some of those providers that I just outlined. So that's something that is ongoing and we continue to do. That's kind of all I really wanted to say as part of an overview. So what I'd like to do is hand it over to you now to ask any questions that you have. And Connie, I think it's going to be you that's going to facilitate the Q&A.
Yeah, that's right. So do we have any questions from the group to get us started? AJ?
Hi, Anthea. Thanks for organising this session this afternoon. I guess I was just curious about the western side of the lake development. I was under the impression that area was not meant to be developed, and I'm just wondering how who's being awarded the development approvals for that area, and what's the plan for that side of the lake?
Yeah, so we've considered development on that side of the lake as one of the catalyst precincts. And so what we were envisaging is that it could be used for accommodation. It could be like a hotel or a resort style development. It could be a golf course. It could be a health spa type facility. There's no developers or anything like that have expressed any interest. It's just that we thought it was an opportunity, but it would be picked up as part of the Catalyst Precinct work, and it would get rezoned at this stage. But in terms of future development, the private sector would need to look at developing in that area, and at this stage there's nobody that's been earmarked to do that. It's more an opportunity for the future.
Thanks. So can I just specify, so with the Catalyst Precinct, from the earlier call, is that being funded through the government, or are you saying that it's open for submissions from private parties to develop that area?
Yes,
it'll be rezoned.
Yeah, so the master planning will rezone it to enable a change of land use. What government will do, and these decisions still need to be made, but what government will do is we'll put in infrastructure to support future development. But, for example, if it was to be a resort, that would need to be a private sector developer that would come in and do that. New South Wales government is not going to build hotel accommodation, but it will facilitate the infrastructure to support that type of a development. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't say will, could.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, AJ. We've got a question here from Deb, Sue and Pat, just wanting some more detail around how aged care will be provided so people can stay in Jindabyne longer as they get older.
Yeah, so aged care has been something that got identified with us very early on as a need within Jindabyne. And we were thinking that it needs to be situated close to town to give good access to the services within town. There have been a couple of sites, and I'm not across this detail, Connie, and I don't know if you are. There have been a couple of sites that have been discussed with council recently, but I'm not sure if there's actually a service provider that's put their hand up to do that. I guess what the master plan is doing is identifying it as a need and identifying some sites in and around Jindabyne where it could potentially be developed. But at this stage, I don't know if there's a developer or an interest being expressed from the market. Connie, I don't know if you've got anything to add to that.
Yeah, there's a few sites associated with the Anglican Church and another church in town that have been discussed. Currently, my understanding is this council have put out an expression of interest to have a private sort of a care provider look after their Cooma, Berrydale aged care facilities that are currently operational, and as part of that they'd be looking at extending that to a service in Jindabyne. But yeah, that's something that council are looking at the moment. That's about all we've got on it though. We've got any other questions here? Go. David, would you like to go ahead?
Oh, David, I think you're on mute still.
How's that?
That's
Yeah,
better.
Yeah, I've raised this at previous sessions, but I'll raise it again. If we're really serious about sustainability for Jindabyne, can we please have a close look at the way we currently treat sewerage and what we do with treated sewage? I reckon it's really embarrassing if most people don't realise what happens to treated sewage. It grows a nice blackberry crop where it discharges into the Snow River because of the effluent. It's far from what people coming to a place like Jindabyne would expect. I just think in this day and age with the opportunities that we've got through this planning process, surely we could be looking at identifying areas that would be appropriate to reuse that effluent for tree planting schemes, as an example. I'm not the technical expert. I'm sure you guys have got technical people, but I'm not really seeing that issue has so far been taken seriously, because if we are going to irrigate areas, you've got to have those areas identified as part of the master planning process. So have you got any thoughts and comments on that? Thanks.
Yeah, so to facilitate the growth that we anticipate under this master plan, we are going to need to upgrade a number of utilities, and the sewerage network has been one that's been earmarked for upgrading. So detailed design still needs to occur, so we haven't gone to that level of detail yet. So that's something that would be done as part of the next stage of development. But in terms of looking at options for what you have suggested around different treatment options or the use of land for such an activity. We haven't looked at it as part of the draft master plan, but I'd really like to get a submission from you on that, because that's something that will assist us in addressing that through the finalisation of the plan.
Okay, I can certainly guarantee you I'll send a submission in, and I hope others will too, because, honestly, I just think in this day and age, we're not setting a very high bar for ourselves in this area. Government spent a fortune putting environmental flows down the Snow River, and all we're doing at the moment is just adding to those the woes of the Snow River with more sewage going down, unless we really bite the bullet and do something really substantial. And I'm not just talking about high level of treatment and more water in the Snow River. I'm talking about really being innovative and perhaps having no discharge at all into the Snow River. Thank you.
Thanks, David. I will just add to that, when you're preparing your submission, the infrastructure technical report that's available online, I'll pop a link here. It does have specific sections about water, wastewater and stormwater. So some of that could be valuable to go into your submission as well.
Thank you.
Okay, next question from anyone?
Here we go. Hugh's just popped one in the chat here. Thanks, Hugh. Is there a plan for social housing
in Jindabyne in addition to the plans for aged care?
So when I talk about housing diversity, we look at things like social housing, well, definitely social housing, but we look at standard lot development. We look at rural development. We look at sort of townhouse style type of development. We look at tourist development. We look at key worker developments, and then we look at social housing. So it is a whole sort of mix of dwelling type, density, and locations that we're trying to target. We need to provide flexibility because we don't want to be in a situation where we say this type of housing has to go in this location, because what we know makes a good community and a good environment is to have a diversity mix at various different locations. So we haven't been specific as to where social housing will be located, only that we do want to see social housing in the residential growth areas.
Thanks, Anthea. Do we have any other questions to move on to?
Here we go, Kelly. So how are the
plan cater for housing affordability and ensure that there is adequate year-round residential housing?
So we are looking at permanent residents. We are looking at seasonal workers. We're looking at tourists. So we're trying to develop something that has the flexibility to cater for all of the demands. We've done some work, and I wouldn't be able to tell you the data off the top of my head, but we've done some work around visitation numbers. and what we think the population numbers will be over time as well. So the work that we've done on the housing side looks at what the demand is and provides enough area to cater for those types of dwellings into the future. The mix will be, in terms of the market demand, will drive a bit of, what gets done first and where some of those houses and dwellings will be located. But what we're doing, and it's very intentional, is that we provide the flexibility to enable all types of development in those residential growth areas.
Great, thanks, Anthea. We've got a good question from Gordon here, which we touched on earlier, but we might go into a little bit more detail. And that's around how the community can have the ability to have their input in the next stage of the plan. So that is one thing Anthea touched on, that in the future we'll also be looking at preparing for the National Park and Alpine DCP. For the Catalyst precincts in Jindabyne, that would be a delivery plan. And for the growth precincts in Jindabyne, an amendment to the existing Snowy DCP, so the Development Control Plan. So all of those items will be available for consultation, similar to the process we're doing now with the draft master plan. And those sort of development controls, what's in those documents, that's some of the finer details. So that's when we're talking about, say, parking rates or building height, some urban design, landscaping controls. So all of those finer grain things that go into what a development ends up looking like will be available for you guys to all have your say. So we'll be looking at that, say, mid-next year, early to mid-next year, I would say.
But just to add to that, Connie, we have done community consultation through pop-ups, through online events, and I appreciate that we probably haven't reached out our network. We're building our network all the time, and so I think some of those earlier consultation sessions may not have reached all of the database of people that we now have in terms of contact names and contact details for. So in the past, we have held and we have done community pop-up events to get people's input into the process as we're undertaking the work. And we'll continue to do that as we are preparing those development control plans. And then there'll be the formal public exhibition process, which is what we're doing now, that will be done once those plans are developed. So again, it will be an online process where we request people to write formal submissions to formally comment on the work that we've done. But we are really keen to continue the engagement work that we've been doing so that you are also able to contribute into the development of those plans.
Great. And I will just add to that, if you do have comments around those kind of topics at the moment, feel free to include them in your submission. They will be just as important down the road as they are today. So if you do have those on the top of your mind, feel free to include them. We've got another question here from Monica. Just some overview around the changes to the Lake Foreshore and the area near the bowling club and Banjo Patterson Drive.
So a couple of things. Firstly, one of the overarching vision objectives for the Snowy Mountains SAP or master plan was to better connect the town to the lake. And to facilitate that, we needed to look at Kosciuszko Road and how we can make Kosciuszko Road more of a walkable street and a pedestrian-friendly street so that people can get access from town to the foreshore. And so to facilitate that, the Southern Connector has been proposed. The Southern Connector will get people up onto the mountain faster for those people that just want to go to the mountain. And it will enable us to do some treatment of Kosciuszko Road to really sort of see out that vision of making it a pedestrian-friendly street. And then we can open up those access points from town to the foreshore. We're also proposing to do a number of things along the foreshore itself, where we'll be looking at event spaces, looking at potentially some development opportunities around food and beverage, that sort of thing. The Banjo Patterson Park would be looking to expand that, landscape it, not put any sort of development as such, but it's more around that landscaping and keeping it as a park. Connie, off the top of my head, I don't know about the bolo. Do you know what plans were put forward for that?
I don't off the top of my head either, I'm afraid.
I'll need to come back to you on the bolo.
Okay, moving on. Let's see what other questions we've got here. So AJ's got another question that follows David's, looking at improvements to the local material recovery centre with scope for localised recycling centres. I think, Anthony, correct me if I'm wrong, that might be one that we'd have to maybe put to council.
Yeah.
In terms of services.
I know we did look at it. I just can't remember what position we took on that. So we can probably go take that one on notice and come back.
Yeah, we will be. Any questions we don't get to or ones that we'd like to provide a bit of detail for you, we'll be preparing those offline at the end once the meeting's done, and we'll circulate to everyone who RSVP'd. So if we don't get to it today, don't worry, we will get a response across to you. Gordon's got one here. Should there not be zonings that allow for only residential usage or staff accommodation? I guess one thing to explain with that is the standard instrument, so the local environmental plan that allows for certain zonings and where they apply. And if you've had a read of the discussion paper that's also on exhibition, it goes into quite a bit of that. So there are a few residential zones that apply to any council area, including yours. But even those, while they do prioritise residential uses, they do allow other things as well. So they're not quite that narrow. They do allow things that are complementary to residential uses. So while we are making sure that, different kinds of residential development goes in the right place, it can't quite narrow it down that far to just be for, dwellings or staff accommodation. That's just sort of the function of how land use zones work. But thank you for that comment. Have we got any others? Feel free to pop them in the chat or... Oh, here we are, David. You've got another question there. If you wanted to just unmute yourself.
Yeah. Look, a different question. I might have got this wrong because there's just so many documents to read, but when I read about sort of looking at alternate uses for some of the buildings and facilities in Jindabyne, I got the impression there might be a consideration of a reuse of the National Parks office part of the building. And if, for what, I'm not sure, but I would have thought a town like Jindabyne, it's great having park staff working in Jindabyne being part of the community. And that was one of the key reasons in 1997 it was built there. What's your comments? So
certainly not the intention to be relocating any national park staff out of Jindabyne. I think more the comment or the reason that this was being raised is that building's a pretty amazing building, and it could be used for something a little bit different, and that the current office space that's in that building could be built somewhere else, and within Jindabyne, and then that National Parks building as a bit of an iconic building could be repurposed for a tourist purpose. But certainly there's no intention of relocating any National Park staff out of Jindabyne. That's not the intention at all.
No, that's not quite what I'm getting at. I'm not sure whether you're aware, but the design of that building would be the most energy efficient building in the whole town. It's geothermally heated, double glazed, and I don't know, most towns with a huge national park throughout Australia would, and indeed places like New Zealand, be pretty damn proud to have a park building like that with the staff that manage these special areas right in the town. And I just think, and I've got a vested interest. Look, I was part of the process that led to it being built there in 1997, I've got to say, so I'll declare that. But I just think it's an absolute kick in the guts to park staff to say, oh, we've got a better place in mind for you, and we want, to put, I don't know what you put there. But, come on, I think it's a really great building. And when it was built there, It was just a vacant block. There was no use for it. I just think you're selling that current use really short. Pretty disappointed. But anyway, that's my comment.
Thanks for that, David. Any other questions from the group? AJ, so you've got your hand up there.
Yeah, I was just curious about the school site being moved out to Sport and Rec. I was under the impression with the original plan that the public school was meant to stay in town and that the senior school was meant to move out to Sport and Rec. I grew up in Jindabyne and went to the school, so I'm just like, when you're 5 to 12 years old, I think it's better for kids to be able to access like the swimming pool and like Nuggets Crossing and everything, rather than having to catch a bus out of town. I guess especially because I don't think the site out of town is particularly that much bigger to hold both public and junior and senior school. So why has that change been implemented?
Donna, are you online?
Yep, I am.
Are you able to comment on what schools infrastructure has publicly announced?
I think schools infrastructure has publicly announced that the whole school is going to be relocated to the Sport and Rec site. So that is my understanding.
And when was that announced? Can you remember when that announcement was made? Was it about
probably
6 months ago?
I was going to say probably, I'm not sure if it was this year or towards the end of last year, but it is on their website, and I can send you some further information on that, AJ, if you like.
Yeah. So what's the plan with the school site then?
Yeah. So sorry, I'll just go back to your other part of the question, which was, is there enough room on the sports and rec site to facilitate the school? And we've done some master planning work to look at layouts and how you can accommodate a number of different facilities. That work suggests that there's enough room to accommodate the K-12 requirements, and also future looking at using some of that land for open universities and TAFE facilities. So there is quite a lot of land out there that can be accessed for education purposes. And when it comes to facilities, we are looking at expanding some of the facilities on the sports and recreation site to accommodate for the needs of the school community. So there are opportunities to provide those facilities closer to that new school site. In terms of plans for the current school site, so we've envisaged through the master plan that would be a mixed-use site and could accommodate a number of different things, whether it's dwellings, it could even accommodate some commercial sort of shops, that sort of thing. It's quite flexible as to what could go there, but it's really an extension of that town centre in terms of the types of uses that school site could accommodate.
Yeah, because I guess what I'm hearing is that site is like being prioritised because it's so close to town, because the fact that it's financially a huge benefit to the master plan. But I mean, this is an education site. It should be prioritised as an educational facility, as it has been for so long. I can't get my head around why an education facility is now being sold off so that all the kids have to go out of town.
So
what's the education?
So that my understanding is that there is no more capacity on that site to accommodate growth.
Yeah, I know that. I went there when it was a primary school, and it was just a primary school, and now I've seen it become both a primary and a secondary school. But why the original plan was that the secondary school was always going to go out at Sport and Rec, and the primary school would stay in town. And I don't see why it's being prioritised because it's prime land that it can be sold off when it should maintain as an educational facility for the primary school students.
So maybe we'll come back to you with a bit more of that strategic justification for why that decision was made. So we can come back to you with some more information around that.
Great. Thanks for that, AJ.
Gordon's got a question here around parking provisions for the example his walk-up apartments. So that's his understanding that they have minimal parking. Can this be clarified? So when we get to that delivery plan and development control plan stage, that's when we'll be looking at controls which exist in the current DCP. You know, a certain type of development, it might be a single dwelling house requires X number of car spaces. So those are the kind of controls that we will prepare, and you will be able to have a say when we're doing that work, as Anthea mentioned. But certain developments, it's not to say that flat out no parking. We do want to have a really close look at how parking is delivered in and around the town centre and for residential uses. That's just not quite the level we're at with the master plan being such a high level document, but it's certainly part of the future control plans that we'll be preparing. David, you've got another one here. Where will the neighbourhood safer place for bushfire protection be located? Could this be at the Sport and Rec site? Anthea, are you sure on that one?
So again, that's probably a little bit more in the detail, and we're still working with RFS around what some of those controls around bushfire protection will be, because there's a number of different controls that we can put in place around APZs and things like that. So if a neighbourhood safe place is required, because the studies indicate that that's what's needed, the location for that is still yet to be determined.
Thanks, Anthea. So we've only got another 5 or so minutes left. Any other questions? AJ, so you've got your hand up again.
There was one further up, Connie, which I think we missed from Deb, Sue and Pat. Will the proposed restrictions to limit Airbnb days per year apply to this local government area that may assist in making year-round rentals available?
So on that one, I'm not personally aware whether Airbnb controls will apply here. I think it is perhaps a council by council basis. What I can say though is certain residential developments that are tourism focused, there can be controls put in place in a DCP to limit how many months of the year that they're available for such a use. But again, that's the kind of detail that we'd be getting into in that next phase. But if it's something you are concerned about or have some ideas about that you think would help with that sort of year-round housing provision, that housing affordability and diversity that Anthea touched on, please be sure to pop that in your formal submission.
Melinda, would you be able to pop up that next step slide, if you can? Just with the bit of time that we've got left, I'll just, if you haven't already been onto our website, just direct you to where all the information is and how we would like you to put your submission in through our planning portal. Just a reminder that exhibition closes at midnight next Monday, the 23rd. And what we need to do once we receive all of the submissions is we need to formally respond to those submissions. So we will be preparing a submissions report. And then I can say now that we will be making changes to the master plan because we have received some really good comments and feedback, and that will facilitate some change. So we will be consulting on that change as well. It won't be a formal process, but we will come back and talk to the community, hopefully in person, as to what changes we'll be making to the master plan. Once the master plan becomes final, we'll also, when I say we, state government, will also be finalising the business case. So all of this work still needs to be supported by a business case, and the business case will determine how much money is going to be spent on infrastructure in this region. And so that will be communicated around the same time that the master plan is finalised, which we're anticipating to be early next year. And then we've just got some contact details here on the page as well.
Yeah.
And I've just popped the link in the chat as well to take you to the website where you can make your submissions and
view those technical documents. So all the technical studies, if you scroll down, you'll see a little drop-down menu saying View Technical Studies. If you click that, they'll all collapse out from underneath. We've had some people have trouble locating them in the past.
Do we have any last questions before we wrap up for this evening? Okay, well, we might leave it there. Big thanks to everyone for making the time tonight to come and discuss with us. We really appreciate it. Like Anthea said, we wish we could have come in person a bit more, but a bit difficult in the current times. So thank you. We'll be sure to pop any unanswered questions
through to you through other formats. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.